Hey guys, what's up? JOC back here again, and as we all witnessed, the Vikings traded Stefon Diggs. Now, wide receiver is an absolute need for the team, and this was a need before Diggs was even traded. A lot of fans wanted a really good wide receiver 3 to finally pair with it and get this trio, but now all of a sudden our wide receiver is basically a one-man squad. So before we get into potential Stefon Diggs replacements, let's kind of break down our wide receiver, our receiver depth chart before we get into it. So number one, we're going to look at Obisi Johnson, who was 7th round pick last year and kind of came to the scene when Thielen got hurt and was okay. I don't think he's clearly not good enough to be a number 2 receiver right off the bat, and also I don't even know if he's quite good enough to be the number 3. What I see in BC Johnson, he's basically a poor man's Demaryius Wright. He's not going to be as fast. He's not going to be as great after the catch, but we do have that little shiftiness. He can get you with those little yards every now and again, but we need a little bit more bang there, and maybe he can take the next step. He's going to have to get shiftier. I know he's already a good route runner, and he is one of the best teachers in Thielen to learn from, but I am not super comfortable with him being receiver 3, and I think that is okay, because I think our true receiver 3 last year was Irv Smith. So Irv Smith, despite being listed as a tight end, is kind of a slot receiver and can kind of shift into a inline tight end on the Y and then shift out in the slot. So he's kind of a wild card there, and you can kind of list him as kind of a halfway slot receiver. So we kind of have a big slot in Irv, and then our main wide receiver 1 is of course Adam Thielen, and he is another guy that, just like BC, just like Irv, likes to do his work in the slot. So Adam Thielen being the slot guy, being one of the best slot receivers in the league, you maybe make the case that he is the best, but that's up for debate. And you get 3 guys that do their best work inside. So what we really need is an outside receiver. And if we want to straight away replace Diggs, we would want a speedster that can take the top off of defenses. That's Kirk Cousins' biggest strength, is play action, throwing a bomb. That's where he was, without a doubt, one of the best quarterbacks in the league at doing. So we really need that threat, and I do think we have to look to fill that, but before we are looking at these options, I do think Adam Thielen does provide some flexibility here, because despite him not having blazing speed, he's not Deshaun Jackson, but he is fast enough. He's a 4.4 40 guy. You know, he's getting up there in age. He's 30, but it's okay to say Thielen can kind of play all 3 positions at a decent level. I think you say he's elite in the slot, and then still good on either a Z or an X receiver as well. So that gives the Vikings some flexibility where we don't need to just get the speedster, but that would definitely be nice. So let's get into it with number 10, and we're going to be starting off with CeeDee Lamb. So CeeDee Lamb, he has the highest ceiling of all the receivers in the draft. He's a 6'2" receiver and looked really fast on tape, but his 40 was only 4.5, which is on the slower end. So we'll have to see if that will make him slide. But I think a lot of these coaches are looking at tape a lot more than the combine recently. And on tape, you see he's an aggressive receiver. He just goes after the football. He's amazing run after the catch, and he's a contested catch monster. He just goes up there and grabs it. Exactly what you would want in a number 1 receiver. The problem and why he's listed as number 10 on my list is you'll probably be the first receiver off the board. So I think he'll probably be a top 5, maybe slide to a top 15 pick. So CD is probably not going to be worth trading up for unless he slides, because there's so much talent on this board. Maybe 1 or 2 teams have another receiver ahead of him, so maybe he would slide down. But I don't think there is a receiver in this draft class worth trading the house for. When there's so much talent, just get the best one that's there. Maybe if you really like one, slide up a little bit, 2 or 3, 4 spots. but New York going to drop from 22 all the way down to 8 to grab CeeDee Lamb. So this is if he slides, great. Otherwise, it's okay if we don't grab CeeDee. But moving on to number 9, a free agent option, Rashard Perryman. Only 26, so has plenty of football left in him, and he ran a 4.2 40 at the combine, so let's get some speed on the outside. He's our man. But he's only played 51 career games, and he got 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns, so this would be not a very sexy choice in trying to copy in Stefon's production. I'm not sure Perryman would be even a number 2 receiver. He'd probably be something more like a number 3, and I think he'd be fine in that role, because we just a burner would be helping so much with our run game, just to stretch the safeties out and give Thielen more work to work with in the middle of the field. And his market value, according to Sports Track, is 2 years, $8.7 million a year, which I think sounds high. So if they get shaved down to about $5 million a year, and that would be fine, just to have that kind of sort of veteran. He's 26, so he's kind of in between a young receiver and a veteran receiver, but a guy's been in the league a little bit. Just to have that speedster weapon would be pretty cool. Number 8, going back to the draft with Justin Jefferson. He's a great possession slot receiver. Does that sound familiar? I think it does sound a lot like Adam Thielen. So this is not a direct Diggs replacement, but like I said, Thielen has versatility to play on the outside, and Jefferson does as well, but I think as a rookie, not to the same extent. You'd rather him focus on one position, and for a receiver, there's basically 3 different positions. And I think he would be available when the Vikings are on the clock in either of our first-round picks, so he'd be probably a late first-round pick. So he definitely would be an option, but if you want speed on the outside, he's not the best for that. Number 7, let's look at it. A better option if we want speed. KJ Hamler. Very fast and quick, but has problems with drops, and also, kind of like Jefferson, he plays in the slot. KJ Hamler, y'all want some Percy Harvin from 2012 back on the field. That's what Hamler is. He gives you that run after catch ability. I think he maybe looks a little bit better just running routes than Harvin did coming into the draft, but you still get that run after the catch ability. You can still do some of those kind of gadget plays with bubble screens and just little drag routes. You just get the ball in his hands. He's also good on special teams, and he's also supposed to just be a day 2 pick. That his 40 time might bring him into the first round, because some GMs just really like those numbers. But he should be a good value option if we slide out of the first round without a receiver. Despite him doing most of his work in the slot, I do think his explosiveness gives the Vikings quite an option on day 2 of the draft. Number 6, going back to free agency, let's look at Demaryius Thomas. He's 32, but still pretty good. He's got 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns the last 2 years combined, so pretty solid if you say that's a number 2 or number 3 receiver type production. And he played with Kubiak from 2015 to 16, where he had an incredible 2,300 yards and 11 touchdowns, which is very, very good. So he who knows Kubiak knows the system, and Kubiak knows him. And I think Demaryius would be very cheap. You'd get something like just a 1-year vet minimum, and he would just be a good fill gap if maybe we go through the draft, we don't get a receiver in the first 2 days of the draft, and then we look at Demaryius to be a number 2 receiver for the year, while we let day 3 guy battle out with BC Johnson to be the number 2 guy for the future. So he'd be a good plug-in and play for a year, maybe 2 receiver for the time being. Number 5, Jalen Reagor. Explosive receiver with the ball in his hands, and is good at high pointing and getting separation. I think he's a bargain bin Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy's getting all the attention. Jalen Reagor has a very similar skill set, just not as refined, basically all the way down the board. Not quite as good of a route runner, not quite as fast. Doesn't get quite as good a separation. His run after the catch might be the only thing that's on the same, maybe even better level. And he looked fast on tape, but where it was a 4.47 40, completely translate if his best asset in college is blowing past every corner. He kind of made him look flat-footed on tape, but would that translate in the NFL with a lot more speed around him? That we'll have to see. And this is another guy that would be around the day 2, probably early in the second round. He might even slide late in the first round if there's a crazy run on receivers. So that's definitely one to look at as well. Number 4, another draftable players, Chase Claypool. How about we grab a 6'4", 240-pound monster that, oh yeah, by the way, also ran a 4.4 240. This is maybe this year's DK Metcalf. He also high points the ball very well and is a great blocker on the outside. So a lot that the Vikings want here. Like I said, we need a speedster, but a big body receiver is also what we need. We need outside weapons, and Chase Claypool plays both parts. And being the great blocker on our outside zone scheme, we need receivers that are willing to block, and he would be basically a tight end out there. So that would be great for all assets of our offense. And he does cause issues. He does have issues creating separation. He does have the straight line speed, like I said, with the 4.4 240, but on the short little routes, it's going to be some contested catches that he will have to make. And Cousins does not like to trust his receivers a lot, so I think this might be a problem for Kirk and not being a good fit for getting a big-bodied receiver that can fly on the outside, that you're going to have to just throw the ball up and hope for the best, because Cousins just doesn't have a good career doing that. But I think this would be a great option, and it shouldn't be another day 2. Probably slide into round 3 or late in round 2 type of a pick. So that'd be a great value draftable player. Number 3, he's going to be the last free agent option on this list, and that's going to be Robbie Anderson. He's another guy that's only 26, and he's also undrafted, so the Vikings could have the best undrafted duo at wide receiver of all time. Then he averaged 760 yards a year on a horrible team with the Jets, and 14.8 yards per reception is great. So he replaces a lot of what we had in Diggs, and he's basically not quite as good version of Diggs. He's more of a straight line speed guy. He's not super great run after the catch, but he does give us a lot. And market value 4-year, $12 million a year is definitely steep. But if we want to straight away replace Diggs with a guy that has a proven record already and still young, that's probably the best option that we could possibly do if we are truly in a win now area where we think we still have, maybe you want to say it, the next 3 years, because that's what Cousins' contract is under, to have a chance to win it all. Robbie Anderson would probably give us the best chance right away. But moving on, number 2 and 1 are both very close, so we're going to talk about those together. But first, let's look at some honorable mentions. Number 1 is Laviska Chenal. He's a playmaker wide receiver. Reminds me a lot of Cordero Patterson. He has that chiseled body, super fast. Looks like he's made in a lab, but he needs to work on routes and durability. He'll probably be a late first or second round pick. And despite him having that big frame and athletic ability where he's kind of like Claypool in that way, he seems too gimmicky for me to put him on the top 10. But if the Vikings do pick him up, it would be an interesting option because we can use him in a lot of different ways. The second honorable mention is Emmanuel Sanders, 33, but still making plays, about 800 yards and 4 touchdowns, over 12 yards per reception in the last 2 years on 2 different teams. So he's still making plays. It'd be a clear number 2 receiver for the team, and it would take a lot of pressure off Thielen. The problem is his market value, according to Sports Track, once again, 2 a year, $10 million a year. That's a lot for a 33-year-old wide receiver. But he had 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns both years when he was with the Broncos with Gary Kubiak, so more intrigue there. And then my last honorable mention, just to bring up the name, is Josh Gordon, the player that can't stay away from weed, passes more blunts than he has balls. But Josh Gordon, with the new CBA agreement, the NFL is no longer testing for marijuana, so I don't think that should be an issue. He is under his suspension right now, but hopefully using that new CBA agreement as leverage, maybe he can get that off and he can be an unrestricted free agent, and the Vikings might be able to get him for a 1-year prove-it deal and see if there's anything there. Just for his little bit of time, whenever he's active, he's a super good, and he might be the best value day one dominating player on this entire list. That's just such a question mark if he'll even be available to play. But moving on to the last two picks, we'll talk about them kind of like a tie. So we're looking at both Alabama first round potential rookies. Number one, Henry Ruggs. He's the best deep threat in this list, period. A 4.27 40, but also runs pretty good routes, not exceptional, but a lot more than you'd expect for a guy that's that fast, and has pretty solid hands. He does have trouble with physical DB play, but when you're that extremely fast, DBs aren't going to be playing very physical with you. They're going to play about 20 yards off of you, and you'll have so much room to work with. So imagine this, where we have teams that want to put 8 men in the box with Dalvin Cook out there, and we probably have a 2 tight end set, and then we have old Henry Ruggs on the outside and Thielen on the other. What are teams going to do? Because you need a safety over the top of Ruggs. You just have to respect the speed, and the Vikings could just play with that all day. He would help a run game a ton because it would force a too high safety package, or at least help on the side of Ruggs, and it would just give Cousins his best deep threat, well, since Stefon Diggs, but also kind of like Deshaun Jackson. So this is maybe the most exciting player the Vikings could get out of this top 10, and it would be a very fun pick if the Vikings would pick him. He should be a top 20-ish pick. He might slide to 22, but the Vikings might have to try it up a little bit to get him, but we'll have to see. Number one, Jerry Jeudy, and I think watching this man's tape, he basically is Stefon Diggs. He's an incredible route runner, a great after the catch, and you can list this with Henry Ruggs too, but since Alabama's receiver core was so brilliant, their receivers can share the wealth. They aren't going to be like Stefon Diggs and be crying on the sideline when he's not getting his 8 targets a game. They are fine with sharing the wealth since they came from college and they had to do that there. So I think it would be great for either of these Alabama guys. Jerry Jeudy could fill in Stefon's shoes instantly, I think. Gives the Vikings a very similar playmaker, and Jerry Jeudy is kind of considered the number 2 receiver in this draft, with him and CeeDee Lamb being the top 2. It'll be interesting to see if Ruggs slides into number 2 or what happens. That's because I think the Vikings would probably be on target for the number 3-ish receiver in this draft, because we have so many other needs. That would be the first area probably be able to look at one, but Jerry Jeudy would be very great of just being that outside elite route runner, can get over the top of defenses, great run after catch, just like Stefon was. Make it happen. It'd be so great to see. But give me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Is there a player I missed? Would you be willing for the Vikings to trade up for one of these top receivers? Give me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next JLC Vikings video. See you guys then.